All right, everybody, here we go. Day 2 of the steering knuckle rebuild project on the 45 Willys MB, or Willys MB if you will. We're in luck. Local farm supply store had some corn head grease, so we're going to go ahead and finish cleaning up and then hopefully start reassembly and get this thing rolling. Here we go. Okay, here we go. I've done a lot of the cleanup and prep work off camera, so you don't have to sit through that. What I am going to do now is I'm going to pack the bearings, pack the kingpin bearings, so you can see how that's done. It shouldn't take a whole lot. These are pretty small bearings. So what we do is we take our bearing, we take a wad of grease, put it in the palm. We grab that grease and we push it up into the bearing, and you do that until it starts squirting out the top. You just push it into the palm, and see there, hopefully you can see that it is squirting out the top there. And we just go all the way around and keep pushing grease into that bearing until it's fully packed. Down in the knuckle, where we're going to go ahead and set that right in there. Pull out some of that excess. And again, we're just pressing the edge of that bearing down into the grease up against the palm, push it up into the bearing, make sure that the bearing is fully packed. Oh yeah, that looks good. Alright, now this lower bearing is going to be a little bit tricky because we have to use grease to hold it in till we get the knuckle on. So I'm going to go ahead and grease the bearing cup well. And of course the bearing itself is greased well. And I'm going to push that bearing right up in there and hope that it sticks. And it did. Alright, so now I'm going to clean off some of this grease here and we will continue. Okay, so off camera I went ahead and put the studs back in so that we can put our shims in and all of that fun stuff as we put it back together. So I'm gonna go ahead, there we go. Now it's important that we keep our shims even. I'm going to start with 4. They had 3 coming out, but with these bearings being new, I want to make sure we have plenty of space. I can always come back in and remove if it's too much. So I'm just going to take all 4 shims and set them right down on the casing there. And then I take my kingpin and got a little coating of grease on there to hopefully make this whole thing a little bit easier. Make sure I get it oriented properly. And in we go. Let's see if we can't get this baby to seat. Oh. We will take our lower. It's all cleaned up as well. Put a little dab of grease on there to hopefully ease installation. Don't want it thick, but do want it slick. And there we go. We got 1, 2. There's 3 shims. Let me grab another. That's 2. These babies are thin. Oh, that was 3. So let's double check here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Go. 4 shims. Put these guys right up on there. And we will hope and pray that this lower cap, we can get it seated properly. There we go. Woo! Nice. All right. Now, while I've got that bottom on there, I'm going to go ahead and, I'm not going to tighten it down, but I'm going to go ahead and seat those nuts on there so that sucker doesn't back out. Okay. Oh yeah. All right. So now that is super smooth. There is some resistance, which there is supposed to be, and no more slop. That is exactly what we want. Okay, before you reinstall your knuckle, you want to be sure to install your seals first. We'll slide the felt on first. Quite a bit of a hassle. There we go. So that will make it a whole lot easier to reassemble your seal rather than trying to put it on over the entire knuckle. All right, so then once again our bearing goes right up in there. cheat slightly here. Okay. Oh yeah. Now we take our rubber seal and we press it into the back of the knuckle. Doesn't exactly want to stay there all on its own. Then we take our backing plates, we match them up with the felt. You start these screws. Making sure my rubber is still lined up properly, and it is. I'm going to get my second backing plate. Run that bolt through. Get it started. The other side, run that bolt through the felt. And then get it started. So that the seal and the sweeps really added some resistance to that to the turning of that knuckle, but that will certainly ease up as those parts wear in. All right, so now let's Take a minute, let's reattach our tie rod. Okay, so now I'm going to remove the drain plug or the fill plug on the steering knuckle so that I can insert the grease. I'm going to insert a lot of it through the front here just to save time and to show what we have going on. But I want to be able to put some grease in through the front as well. Turn that towards the camera so you can see a little bit of what's going on. So I've loaded my John Deere cornhead grease into my grease gun, and that's going to be kind of a slow way to do it, but didn't know how else to get all of that grease out. So I'm just going to go ahead and start pumping a lot of this in here. The good thing is that this grease is a lot more fluid than standard grease that you would put through a grease gun, so it makes life a little bit easier. Now, if I had a battery-operated grease gun, that would be even better. So it's going to take a little while to pump a lot of this in here. Now, I off camera earlier, I cleaned a lot of that old grease out of the CV joint on the axle, which should make life a little easier as well. And I've already pumped some of this cornhead grease into that CV joint as well. I didn't know how fluid this stuff was until I pumped it into there. It will get into that CV joint no matter what I do. But I want to get some of this started in here. Alright. That's good for now. Now I'm going to go get the axle and reinstall it. Let me straighten out the wheel first so that I got a straight shot in. There we go. Alright, here we are with the axle. I'm going to go ahead and install it back in here. You can see I've kind of inserted some grease into the CV joint. There we go. Ah, very nice. Okay. So now we have the CV back in the knuckle. We have the axle back into the differential. Now I'm going to test and make sure that it's all the way in and the splines are engaged by rotating the axle and making sure that it rotates the differential. Oh yeah. My other wheel is turning in the opposite direction, so we are seated in there. Alright, so what I have here is RTV silicone gasket maker, and it's not going to take a lot. I just don't want to deal with a lot of leaks here, so I just put a little bit along here, and the spindle will even this out, spread it out when it compresses. You don't want to get a whole lot because then it just pushes it all out and makes a mess. We just have just a fine coating all the way around, and as the spindle flange presses in there, it'll spread it out and seal it up real nice. I'm going to go ahead and install the spindle, and I'm going to install the spindle where the groove is visible to you. And again, I'm going to draw this in. I'm going to draw this in and seat it first, and then take the bolts back out to put on the disc brake hardware after the spindle is seated. And then we'll just see how that draws that in there. There we go. Just want to be real gentle. Make sure that seats in there properly. And you can see as we do this, we get just a little bit of silicone squirting out of the edge. And that is perfectly fine. In fact, that's great because you know you've squashed it in there and made yourself a nice gasket. Okay. Now I'm going to turn around and remove all those bolts. Now that my spindle is seated, I'm not going to remove all of it yet because I don't want to put on my disc brake hardware until I have filled up the grease reservoir. So I'm going to leave a couple of those in. I'm going to leave a couple of those in, and I'm going to start pumping in the grease. Now this won't take the whole tube of grease. It'll take about 2/3 of it. I don't remember exactly what the capacity is, but the capacity of this knuckle is less than the amount of that tube. So what I'm going to do is I am just going to insert the grease hose into the knuckle and start pumping. I am going to put my filler plug back in. And snug it up. So these Jeeps, obviously, you know, if you're out Jeeping at all, you're going to be in creeks and rivers and mud puddles and all of that fun stuff. So the chances of getting water past these primitive wiper seals is pretty good. So we want to make sure that we use a grease that can operate if it gets a little wet, and this stuff is designed to do just that. Now let's install the caliper bracket and dust shield. On the knuckle. Oh yeah, there we got cornhead grease coming out there. See, if that was 90 weight, it would just be flowing out. And these are two separate pieces, but they kind of stuck together after I painted them, so that's fine. They're easier to handle as one, so I'm not complaining. Those two bolts started. Again, I don't want to put this down too tight. With an impact, you can easily rip out the threads or take off a bolt head, which I do not want to do at this point. So now let's clean up just a little of that debris off of the spindle, and we can reinstall our hub. Alright, that looks good. Okay, so here we have our hub, and I don't need to do anything particular here. It is already set up and good to go. I may put a little extra grease in there, but the rear bearing cup and seal are already on there. There we go. And that sets in there real nice, and it's smooth. Right here, and here goes our outer bearing, and it goes right in there, pushes right into that. Alright, well, it's a bit unfortunate, but from this point I lost a bit of video from the video for reassembling the bearings and adjusting the bearings in the hub. You see the insertion of the outer bearing. Following that goes a washer, and then the first bearing nut. You want to be sure to start that nut by hand and thread it in by hand as far as you can, and then use your socket to tighten it. Now the manual says to tighten to 50 foot-pounds and then back off 1/6 of a turn. My socket doesn't allow me to attach the torque wrench, therefore I have to do it by feel. So I go ahead and I tighten that bearing nut until the hub has a bit of resistance and maybe even a slight bit of roughness to it. Then I will back that nut off until the hub turns freely and is very smooth, yet has no play. Following that, put the second washer in, this with the tab in the groove and facing inward towards the center of the hub. Then you put that outer nut on, and again start it by hand so you don't cross thread it and damage your spindle. And this can be tightened down until it's quite tight. It does not affect the adjustment of the bearings. It simply holds the adjustment that you made in place. It doesn't allow it to back off once you start operating the vehicle. This final nut is just to hold the other nut in place. So we can crank down on it really tight. And that's not going anywhere, right? All right. I'll make one final check here, make sure that my bearings are running smoothly. I don't feel any roughness at all, and they're running smooth. Nice. Okay. So next, we are going to reinstall the drive flange. I know earlier, or yesterday, I kept calling it the cap. It's not a hubcap. We took the hubcap off first. This is the drive flange, and you see in both views here, it matches the spline shaft here. So when the axle turns this flange, and this flange in turn is bolted to the hub, and that's how we get power to the front wheels. So let me just slip that on just like so. And there went all my shims. Those are my new shims. I need to pick those up and clean them up. We line up the holes. All right. Now again, we're going to use the 9/16 and gently seat these in here. Don't want to get too aggressive with the torque. These 80-year-old bolts shear off pretty easily. So I get them seated down with the impact, and then I'm just going to check them manually. Now the hub is reassembled. I know that our axles are in place because the opposite wheel is turning in the opposite direction. Now, before I put my calipers back on, I want to make sure that I don't have any grease on my brake rotor. So here we have some brake clean. Gonna spray it. Also wipe it down here. Make sure that everything is good. On this step, you want to make sure that you use actual brake parts cleaner, not carburetor cleaner. Most people have carburetor cleaner on hand, but carburetor cleaner has lubricant in it, which completely defeats the purpose of removing all lubricant from your rotor. Alright, and then the two last steps for finishing up this steering knuckle project is the retaining nut. So, I don't know if you can see here, but this floating axle is floating. It can move around in there, and we want to secure it so that it does not. So we put on our washer and our retaining nut here. Now as we tighten this guy down, it doesn't need to be super tight, but it does need to line up with the holes for the cotter pin. I have none showing. Need to go a little bit more. There we go. There's a hole right there. So we've got it snugged up. Keep that axle from running around crazy. And we put our cotter pin through the hole. The hub is back up. Now all we have to do is reinstall our brake calipers. And we just slide that guy right there into place. And I'm going to get my caliper bolts. Making sure my bushings are in place. There we go, that one has started threading, so I grab my other one and go through the other. Make sure it comes through. Okay, and then one last check is I want to make sure that my caliper is going to clear. Yeah, caliper needs to clear that steering knuckle, which it does, in order for the caliper to move in as the brake pads wear. Okay, well, that was quite the adventure. I hope you enjoyed that. You know, I bought this Jeep not as a project, but to run around and have fun in. But you know, when you purchase 80-year-old iron, you're bound to run into issues. I knew that going in. It wasn't my intention, but hey, you know, we deal with it as we can. Hopefully I can get this brake conversion done quickly. We can get back out on the trail and the back roads and in the woods and give you some good Jeep videos to follow. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this entertaining.